and welcome back to my channel where I'm going to cover the Druid's Circle of Wildfire class specialization from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass, as well as explain and set up the various features gained. The Druids, through this circle, have managed to unlock the power of destruction. And much like an evoker within the Wizard class, the Druids in this specialization gain far more destructive spells than any other specialization. And this comes from their belief that through destruction comes new creation, just like the Circle of Spore Druids believe that death eventually leads to new life. As we have learned over time, controlled burns within some forests will trigger large swaths of regrowth, and so too did the Druids of the Circle. And through this, they were granted more destructive spells to harness that power against those who wish to harm life overall, and therefore maintain the balance. Though, let's be honest, anyone who loves to play with fire is really going to love this class. I've indicated this in previous videos, but a Druid chooses their circle at level 2, giving the player some time to decide what circle they want to take before committing to it. And because of that, I used another video to create the base Druid class that is required in order to go through the process of creating a specialization. So I'm going to include that in the description below so that you have quick access to it. And with that, let's take a look at what the Circle of the Wildfire gives you for options. So the first thing I'm going to do is drop our level into place and trigger our class specialization request for the Circle of Wildfire. And the very first feature your character is going to gain is called the Circle Spells of the Wildfire class specialization feature. And much like the Circle of Spores, your character is going to gain access to non-standard druidic spells that your character would otherwise not have access to. These spells are ones that are always prepared, and the only time you will lose the ability to cast them is if you're totally out of required spell slots. However, because these spells are given to the class, they don't count against the list of spells that your character can normally prepare, and should not be included in that process of replacing them if you choose to change them out. And what I mean by that is that these circle spells are specifically set aside for your character in order to do what they need to do as part of the Wildfire class specialization. Therefore, they cannot be changed out, unlike your other spells that can be changed out over time. And for example, right away, your character is going to gain access to the Burning Hands and Cure Wounds spells, so we're going to want to ensure that we add these to our character sheet. Now, I'm going to try to create a brand new spell group specific to these spells. I don't want them included in the initial group that is created through the actual class wizard, or if you're going through the process of manually dragging these spells into place and manually creating your character, you're going to get a different kind of group. But what I'm going to do is change this group name. First things first, I'm going to change this to Wildfire Spells. When I do that, the spell indicator or the level indicator is going to disappear from here, and we're going to get a dead group. I'm then going to modify the group to be of the group type Spells, and you just click on that icon that's there. That returns this and sets this up to be a set of spells. This way, when we go through and burn through our actual list of spells, if we go back to combat here, you'll see that we don't have any spells listed outside of our cantrips. Whereas if I bring this back, we gain access to these spells again. That is the limitation we have to address when it comes to our group spells, or our circle spells, I should say. Simply because of the fact that the only limiter is how many spell slots we have. They're always going to be available to us. They're always going to be prepared. So let me go through and drag in Cure Wounds, and when I drop that into here, it will automatically add it to this group. And that's exactly what we want. We want to ensure that any spell that gets dragged out of this particular information sheet and into the Wildfire Spells group will automatically go through and create the next set of groups. So if we drag in the level 3 spell, for example, it will create a Wildfire Spells level 3 group for us. We don't have to worry about it. The only adjustment I want to do before moving on is ensure that our primary stat, which I do believe is Wisdom for our spell casting, let me just confirm that. And what I'm looking for is this indicator here. Yes, Wisdom is our ability when it comes to spell casting. I just want to make sure that all of our spells are set up to use Wisdom, because we're going to be getting a different grouping of spells than what would normally be acquired by a druid. Therefore, we want to ensure they are using the right stats. And your character is going to gain additional spells at levels 3, 5, 7, and 9. And I'll be sure to circle back to this particular feature each time that we have to go through and add new spells, and I apologize for the pun. Also at level 2, your character will gain the Summon Wildfire Spirit feature that gives you a new way to make use of your Wild Shape feature. Instead of changing into a beast, your character will be able to summon a Wildfire Spirit that will appear in an area that is within 30 feet of where your character stands. When the spirit first appears, if there is anyone within 10 feet of that spirit, other than yourself, they will need to make a dexterity-based saving throw or suffer 2d6 points of fire damage. And yes, that does mean friendly party members and allies. Unlike an evoker, this particular class specialization does not gain the ability to selectively choose who suffers damage if everyone is clumped together. The form of the spirit is only limited by your imagination, but there are a few things you should keep in mind: how it's going to move, what its capabilities are, and how it's going to attack. But it is essentially a free-form spirit or entity, so the shape can really be nearly endless as to what you can think of. During combat situations, the spirit will share your initiative roll and will go immediately after your turn. And this is done intentionally because if you choose not to do a bonus action and give the spirit a command, it will do nothing more than dodge. But if you choose to command it, it will do that action instead. And there's a limited number of actions that you can take. You can move the creature around, as well as use the actions that are going to be in the NPC stat sheet that you will see once the DM has shared the information sheet over to you at the time that you summon the creature. If, however, your character becomes incapacitated, then the spirit can move on its own as well as take any action that is within its action sheet or information sheet without any further input from any other party member. At this particular point, it's up to the DM as to whether they take control of the creature or whether you still get to control it, even though you yourself are incapacitated. The summoned spirit will remain around for about 1 hour or until it's reduced to 0 hit points, your character dies, or you choose to summon another spirit. So how do we make use of this? Well, the first thing we're going to do is add Summon Wildfire to our action sheet, and that is because it shares the uses of our Wild Shape feature. And the first thing I'm going to do is drag over the Wild Shape feature, and that's because it's going to set our group, if you will, and I'm just going to copy this name. There we go. I'm then going to drop Summon Wild Fire Spirit, and I don't know why it's so hard to say for some reason for me. And also set that up to be part of the same group. And the thing that you'll notice here is that there is a saving throw as well as the 2d6 fire damage already set up for us. This, however, isn't set right. First thing we're going to want to do is ensure that we set up the group to be wisdom-based. And when we do that, that will update the saving throw as well as anything else that happens to get added here in the future if we decide to do so with the correct saving throw. The other thing I'm going to do is pop this back open, and I'm going to set it for 2 daily uses because that's how many uses you get. 2 short or long rest uses, meaning if your character completes a short rest, you still gain access to it because the Wild Shape feature is a skill that you recover after you finish a short or a long rest right here. Now when I go ahead and actually use one of these, if I have chosen to summon the spirit instead of the Wild Shape feature and changing a beast into beast form, I click that and you'll see that Wild Shape also gets a check that gets used. That's because these two are sharing the actual uses, and that's what we want. This sets it up so that we can now move on to how do we deal with the spirit itself. Well, from the DM's point of view, and this is the Dungeon Master screen, the very first thing they're going to want to do is search for the Wildfire Spirit itself. And you will see here that there's only one creature if you type in the word Wildfire. This is a template. This should not be shared over to the user in its current form. What you want to do is drag and drop a copy of that into place. You're then going to want to manipulate this particular version of the sheet. And there are some notes that are here that you might want to just quickly read over because some of these actions gain the Druid's current proficiency bonus. At the level that this character is, that means that there is a +2 bonus that comes into here, and you will see a plus PB reference here, and that's the area that you want to change. So you want to first unlock the character sheet, and then search for any instance where you see that PB right here and add a +2. over time, as this character levels up, this is going to need to be adjusted. Now, the good news is that you only have to copy this information sheet, if you will, once. We also want to get rid of the template in the name because it is now technically a Wildfire Spirit. I'm going to relock this sheet again. And we still have to technically deal with the hit points, but I'm going to show you how to first share it before we deal with that. The first thing that you're going to want to do is grab the icon here and then drop it right over top of the Druid's own icon that you see in the upper left or wherever you've moved these icons to. Drop that into place, and then you will see that it is going to gain a shared tag here in the NPC list. Now, if I look back on the player screen, I will now see that I have a Wildfire Spirit creature that has been shared for me. The next thing that as a player I'm going to want to do is grab this icon and drop it into my quick access slot. And the reason being is that once the DM shares this sheet, they shouldn't have to share it again. The responsibility for opening and closing it is now on your shoulders. So just putting it into your quick box down here will help you do that. The creature itself is still not yet ready for actual use, and that is because the hit points are incorrect. Right now, we have a base of 5 hit points. Well, that is actually supposed to be 5 hit points plus 5 times your Druid's level. Your Druid level right now is level 2. That means we need to add 10 additional hit points, to the character sheet. And that is done on the DM screen simply by, once again, unlocking the information sheet, going down to the hit point box, and then just simply updating it to be 15. And as we can see on the player side, once I made that change, it showed up. Each time this character levels up, that value is going to have to be adjusted. So this is something that you're going to want to keep in mind, though I'm not going to cover it every single level in this class, because otherwise that would really extend the length of this video. So the next thing is, how does this actually work in combat? Well, I'm just going through and setting up the combat situation here, and I wanted to point one thing out. You as the player will not be able to drag and drop the NPC into the combat tracker. That responsibility is not yours. That is on the DM. The DM will be able to drag and drop the information sheet down and add our creature to the combat tracker, and then they'll want to make sure that they set up the faction to be friendly, which is green. They are also going to want to ensure that when they add this particular creature into the combat tracker, they adjust the initiative to be that of yours, although in this particular case, you'll see that I put them at 21 each, and it sort of set things up out of order. We don't want it this way. We actually want it to be your character going first, and then the Wildfire Spirit. Well, there's a trick to that. The DM can use a point system, if you will, when it comes to the initiative roll. So right now, 21 is what your character rolled. In this particular case, if I set it to 20.9, it will ensure that pretty much immediately after the Druid goes, the Wildfire Spirit is going to go. Unless there is another 21 in here, then we might have to worry about adjusting that. And that can be done by adjusting the 21 to also include decimal notation here, if you will, when it comes to setting up the initiative. So if there are 3 people that have initiative here in 21, not including the Wildfire Spirit, then the way it would work is 21.4 would be your character, 21.3 would be the spirit, 21.2 would be the next character that has to go, and then 21.1 or just 21 would be the last character that has to go. So there's still some manipulation that will have to happen with the initiative roll. And if there's a dungeon master that is out there that forces players to actually go through and roll initiative after each round, kind of like me, they will have to remember to adjust that every single time. So this is really one of the downsides of doing an initiative roll each time, whereas the benefit is each round is unique and the adjustment might play in favor of the party or it might play against it, rather than everyone always knowing the turn and dreading anything that's coming up. It allows for a bit of a change up. Now that we're in the combat situation, essentially the way this is going to work is that you are going to make use of your turn. So I'm going to target the the vampire here, and just simply go ahead and make a swing with the scimitar. That's a miss. Oops, I didn't need to do damage, but anyway, doesn't matter. It's a test scenario. I'm going to delete that damage anyway. It was only 5 points. Anyway, now you as a character can command your spirit as a bonus action. That means I'm going to command the Wildfire Spirit to attack the vampire. So I've now set that up. I've told the Dungeon Master. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to pass my token. And here's how this works. Using these options down here, you can attack the vampire. So I'm going to use Flame Seed. It's a ranged weapon attack. And unfortunately, it doesn't have a to-hit modifier here, which means that we have to slightly adjust this particular modifier. So we actually didn't go through and set this up. So your spell attack modifier to hit. What that means is that in your particular case, your character has a spell attack modifier that uses wisdom. That is this. We need to modify this. So I'm going to quickly adjust this particular attack and deal with this. 1d20 plus 4 to hit. Sorry, actually, you don't even need that. It should just be plus 4 to hit. Fantasy Grounds is wise enough to pick that up. Now we can actually go through and make the roll. Didn't have it targeted. And you know why? Because you can't, unless the DM does it for you, actually target this. And even if he does or she does, simply making this roll this way won't actually hit anything. You need to drag and drop it into place. That's how this has to work. Now that's a hit. I can then drag and drop the damage. And that is effectively how that works. If you did not command the actual spirit to do anything, then all it will be able to do is dodge. And it's going to take a dodge action every single turn you don't command it. These two other features here, Flame Seed or Fiery Teleportation, are the only other two actions your character is going to hit. So I'm also noticing here that this here needs to happen in relation to setting up the actual saving throw. You might, however, ask the question, do we really need to set that up? Yes and no. The damage is already set up. We don't have to go through and set that up. But we also already have the saving throw set up. We can just simply make use of this. Because it is your character, or your creature rather, that is initiating the trigger of this particular saving throw requirement, you can simply have them roll this because it is using your own stats, your character's own stats to do so. So I already have the vampire targeted. I've called out in my turn to have the Wildfire Spirit teleport to the location of where the vampire is, or so the spirit and each willing creature of your choice within 5 feet of it can teleport up to 15 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. Then each creature within 5 feet of the space that the spirit left, I should say, must succeed on a DC saving throw, dexterity saving throw, or take 1d6 plus 2 fire damage. That means that I can command this spirit to teleport away from the vampire, and when I do that, this vampire is going to suffer some damage if it fails the saving throw. Well, the saving throw, we already have that set up. It succeeded. Let's say it failed. I would not use this damage. I would simply drag and drop this damage into place. And that's how that feature works. At level 3 and at level 5, so I'm going to do both at the same time, we're going to gain access to our next set of circle spells. And I've applied level 3. I'm going to go back to actions, and I'm going to scroll down and make sure that I have this particular group expanded, specifically the Wildfire Spells group. And the reason being is that I'm going to drag Flaming Sphere into that group, and when I do that, it's going to automatically create a matching group with a level 2 indicator. I'm also going to drag and drop Scorching Ray into there. And that saves us from having to go back and set up all of the entries here within this group because it's all linked to this particular thing. Something you might not know about Fantasy Grounds is that when you have spell groups that are linked like this, it's because their name is the same. If their name is the same, they share the properties that are set within the actual power group entry. Now I'm also going to drop level 5 into place. Get that dealt with. And then I'm going to simply drag over the additional one. So we should see a level 3 group get created, which we did. There we go. So we've now added Plant Growth and Revivify to our action sheet. Now at level 6, your character is going to gain access to the Enhanced Bond feature, which creates a link between your character and your summoned Wildfire Spirit. While the spirit remains summoned, if you cast a healing spell or a spell that will do fire damage, you will be able to roll an additional 1d8 die and add the value rolled to the healing bonus or to the fire damage to increase its total, essentially giving you a bonus 1d8 for your use each time you use one of these kinds of spells. In fact, that's exactly what it's doing. As an added benefit, you now get to choose whom the spell is going to originate from, meaning that you could have the spell itself originate from your own character, or you could have the spell originate from the Wildfire Spirit. It's going to be entirely up to you, and whoever is most likely closer to the individual you're trying to heal, or potentially the character or creature that you're trying to damage. To get this to work, we need to make a minor adjustment to our wild shape feature, specifically the Summon Spirit, to add a new effect here. And this is because we need to ensure that we have a marker that we can attach to our character. So, in this case, I'm going to call it Wildfire Spirit. And I'm going to add the effect to the end. And the reason being is that this is going to be something that does absolutely nothing. Now, Wildfire Spirit, I do believe, lasts for 1 hour. If I'm not mistaken, yes, 1 hour. So we want to set this up to be 1 hour. And that is going to set it up so that when it's in the combat tracker, if we apply this effect to our character, it will remain for a period of 1 hour. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm just going to click the effect, and it will automatically put it into place. Now, here's why I did that. Now I'm going to go ahead and drag Enhanced Bond into here and create a Circle of Wildfire group. I'm then going to add another effect here. And that is going to be for our damage effect, but it will not be for our healing effect because it won't work there. So I'm putting in Enhanced Bond with a semicolon, and I'm going to go 1d8, DMG, MG, 1d8. And it is going to be fire damage? Yes. I don't need the damage, I just need fire. But we're not quite done. We need to make use of something called an if tracker. I'm going to quickly simply copy and paste this. And this is the effect. Enhanced Bond, semicolon, IF in capital letters, colon, and then the keyword custom. And this tells us that we're looking for a custom marker, and that has to be all in capital letters. We then put in the exact name of our Wildfire Spirit effect here. It has to match 100% in round brackets between just after custom and between the semicolon that's here. Once we do that, Fantasy Grounds will look for this, see that it's there, and then add the ability to do an additional 1d8 of fire damage. It's also going to be on our own character. So, if I pop this open, let's say that I hit the vampire with a fire spell while this particular spirit is out there. Then what I'm going to do is this. Do I actually have one? Yes, I have Burning Hands. Well, let's say I'm going to use my Burning Hand spell. Prior to me casting the Burning Hand spell, what I'll do is roll this. That's me. Oops, sorry, not that. That will be this. Forgot to scroll down a little further. So in this case, they succeeded, but let's say that they failed. Although it doesn't really much matter because in this case, they will take half damage. Before I roll this 3d6 fire damage, I actually want to go through and add this effect to us. We already have the Wildfire Spirit there. Now what we want to do is it's going to trigger this Enhanced Bond one. And you'll see that we had a 1d8 die that got rolled there. It's right here. This doesn't go away. This will remain in place unless we add a minor adjustment to it, and we actually want to make that adjustment. We want to ensure that this goes away on our next Actually, it should be next action, I think. Because we don't want it to stick around past the attack that we're going to do. So let's do this again. I'm going to force a saving throw on the... Did I? Yes, I did. Okay, so there we go. Whenever you cast a spell, if a creature succeeds on their saving throw, it will automatically remove the target once the damage is done. So, in this particular case, they succeeded again. I'm going to go ahead, add the effect, and then I'm going to roll the damage. You'll see that, actually, yeah, our target disappeared, but so did our effect. Excellent. We want that. And in this particular case, it won't matter because of the fact that this particular effect is always going to go away on the next action. Now, what about the healing? Well, the healing is going to be a little bit trickier. We can't do an if check for that. What we can do is simply add a new effect that's going to be heal effect. Add a new die to it, which will be a 1d8 die. And it won't be on you. It'll be whoever you're dropping this onto. And then, if you need to actually go through and heal someone, and probably could even include your spirit, you just simply drag and drop it onto them, and away it goes. But that should only go and happen if your character has this effect on you. If it doesn't, you can't do this. That's about the only manual check you'll have to make, though, when it comes to this particular effect. So at level 7, we are gaining our next 2 Druidic circle spells here. So I'm going to expand out level 3 and just drag and drop Aura of Life as well as Fire Shield into place, and it will have created our level 4 group for us. I'm then going to go back, drop this into place till we get to level 9, because that is the next thing that we have to deal with, and do the exact same thing, except with the level 9 spells. Now we have all of the spells that we are going to gain from circle spells, meaning we can get rid of that effect, and everything is set up for us. At level 10, your character is going to be able to make use of the Cauterizing Flames feature, which gives your character a new reaction that they can make use of. With this feature, if a creature dies and they are within 30 feet of either yourself or your spirit, then a spherical mote of harmless flame is going to appear over the body exactly where that creature died, and it will remain there for 60 seconds. If a creature or party member happens to walk through that mote or stops on that very spot, you will be able to use your reaction to convert that spectral flame into either a healing effect for a party member or ally, for example, or a repelling flames that will do fire damage to that creature. There is no attack roll, nor is there a saving throw that needs to be made. It just happens if your character made use of this reaction. And the total amount of hit points healed or dealt is going to be equal to 2d10 plus your character's wisdom modifier, and it is applied immediately. However, there are a couple of limitations that come into play. The first is that this is a reaction, which means it can only be used once per turn. The second limitation is that you can only use this in total a number of times equal to your character's proficiency bonus before your character is going to need to complete a long rest to regain any of those spent uses. So there are a couple of things that we need to go through and set up here. We need to set up a tracking capability for a number of uses, as well as how long that mote is going to be there, and the amount of damage or healing that your character could potentially do. So let's go ahead and drop this into our Actions tab. I'm not going to drag it into there because that would drop it into a spell, and that would work for some reason. I am going to drop it here, though, and copy in our Circle of Wildfire group here. Now, we can see that there are no effects. This means we need to add several effects. First thing I'm going to do is set up the number of uses. That is going to be 2 uses. The next thing I'm going to do is add in a mote effect, if you will. So I'm going to set that up. I'm then going to set up an effect for the damage. And actually, no, I don't want that kind of effect. I'm going to delete that one. I'm just going to create a damage effect and a healing effect. There. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up Cauterizing Flames. That's not the one I wanted. This is. There we go. Now, I'm only calling it this because we're literally putting in a tracker. It's going to last for 60 seconds. Oh, sorry, 1 minute. Just equal. And it's going to be on your character. And the reason I'm doing that is simply because it's the exact same thing we're doing here, except we're not going to have any effect that's going to make use of it. It's just going to be there to tell us that, yes, we can go ahead and use this. And it will automatically drop off after a certain amount of time. You can add this multiple times. So if there are more than one creature that happen to die within that specified range, you could continue to add the effect to your character to tell you how many of those are actually out there. Essentially saying how many uses you will have. Now, I'm then going to add in the damage effect first, because that is 2d10 plus, oops, I closed the one I needed, 2d10 plus your wisdom modifier. So I want to grab the d10, holding down the left mouse button. I want to right click once, and then drop that into place. And then I want to set this to wisdom. And that's going to automatically add our wisdom modifier to the damage. The damage type is going to be fire damage. I'm then going to do the exact same thing for healing. There. And that sets it all up. So how is this going to work? Well, the first thing that we need to do is ensure that we have no other previous effects. Let's say that this ape has died, and it is within 30 feet of where our character is. Well, without the use of an action, you get to add this effect to your character. That's because it died on their turn, not on your turn, and it's not a reaction to track whether something has died. There's no action involved. Now, let's say that things have circled back around, and this vampire has happened to walk through the very spot where that ape died, thereby walking through that moat. Now you can take a reaction. So it would be on their turn that you're taking this reaction. The first thing you'll do is simply drag and drop the actual damage onto the vampire. Oops, not healing, sorry. Let's do the damage instead. There we go. Then you would drop this, because once the moat is gone, it's gone. The exact same thing would happen for healing. So let's say that we had another moat because something else had died in the fight. So I'm going to add the effect to us. And let's say that our spirit happened to walk through that. Well, you could go ahead and heal your spirit. You would just simply drag the dice into place, drop it on top of them, and then remove the effect. That's how it works. Now, the number of uses I've actually set here are incorrect, and that is because we have to set it up for our proficiency bonus. Well, at this level, our proficiency bonus is 4. So I'm going to quickly adjust this and set that correctly. So now we have 4 uses that we can make use of before we have to complete a long rest. So I used it twice, so I now need to go bing, bing. There. Now at level 13, our proficiency bonus is going to increase. That means that we need to update Cauterizing Flames for its total number of daily uses, which is 5. Because it has to match our proficiency bonus. I really wish there was a way to set it up so that when you actually go through and set up preparation, you could sort of toggle this to say proficiency, and it will automatically track that for you. That would be really, really nice. Although in this case, we need it to set it daily. Or even have another option here where you could put in a number or select proficiency, and it would do it for you. Finally, once your character reaches level 14 in the Druid class, they will gain access to the Blazing Revival feature. And as long as your Wildfire spirit is within 120 feet of where your character is at the time that your character is reduced to 0 hit points and becomes unconscious, your character will be able to choose to expend a reaction and make use of that spirit's life force, causing it to reduce itself to 0 hit points and allow your character to regain half of your character's total hit points in the process. In addition, your character would immediately stand back up as if they never fell unconscious in the first place. However, when your spirit is reduced to 0 hit points, it itself will die and simply vanishes. Your character will only be able to use this feature once before they will need to complete a long rest in order to be able to use it again. So, we're going to have to go through and add this to our Actions tab. I'm going to drop this into place, add it to our Circle of Wildfire group, and then I'm going to go through and ensure that I set up the number of uses, which is once daily. That's really all we should have to do when it comes to this particular feature. The reason for that is as follows. There is no easy way to calculate half your number of hit points through this system. So what you're going to have to do each time is take this value, divide it by 2, and then have the DM add that to your character. That's about all you can do, because you won't be able to remove any unconscious effect that comes into play when you're knocked out during combat or knocked incapacitated during combat, simply because of the fact that it's the system that added that effect to your character. You can't delete that. The DM has to. So when you use this effect, Blazing Revival, you'll have to tell the DM, hey, I'm making use of my Blazing Revival effect or feature here. Please add half the number of hit points from 115. You might as well just give them the number. So if you know what that is right off, just go ahead and give it to them. Now, the last feature that we're going to have to make a minor adjustment to is Cauterizing Flames again, and that's at level 17. And that is simply because our proficiency bonus again increases, so we need to ensure that we adjust that number of daily uses that we have. And that completes everything we have to do for this particular character. I really like the potential this Druid class has, with both its healing and fire-related capabilities, as well as how it can nearly bend fire to its will. However, this does bring us to the end of this particular video. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.